I never forgot that day. The day everything I believed in, family, justice, the future, collapsed in a single afternoon. It all began with what seemed like a harmless sentence from my father. "Lucy, sit down, we need to talk." I thought it was about my acceptance into Yale. I imagined they would hug me, cry tears of joy, throw a celebration like in the movies. But instead, they destroyed my entire life with a single decision. A decision so cold I no longer recognized my own parents. I sat at the large dining table, covered with a white cloth, right under the crystal chandelier my mother always bragged about. On the table was a stack of acceptance letters. Yale, Stanford, Columbia, and the latest, Harvard. I still remember my hands trembling as I opened the envelope, then bursting into tears when I saw the word congratulations at the top. "Mom? Dad? I got into Harvard." I didn't try to hide my excitement, and I never imagined that moment would become one of the bitterest memories of my life. My mother walked into the kitchen, still holding a glass of red wine. She didn't say anything. She glanced at the letter in my hand, then quietly sat down. My father followed behind, took off his glasses, and sighed like he was about to announce a company bankruptcy. "Honey, we're so proud of you. But, there's something we need to tell you." His voice was oddly calm and deep, and it set off alarms in my head. I clutched the letter tightly, my heart pounding faster with each second. "Your brother Alex is working with a new startup. They're developing an AI platform for the medical market. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." I cut him off. "Dad. What does this have to do with me?" My mother put her glass down and looked me straight in the eye. "We've decided to use your college fund to invest in Alex's company." I froze. "What?" My father nodded, like he was confirming a brilliant financial decision. "We've been following the project closely. If it succeeds, it'll secure our family's future for years." I stared at them, unable to comprehend. "But that fund was for me. You started it when I was 3. It's everything Grandpa, my uncles, and even I contributed to. How could you just give it to Alex?" My mother shook her head. "Don't be selfish, Lucy. Harvard isn't going anywhere. You can take out loans like everyone else. Alex needs capital to retain ownership of the tech." My fists clenched until they turned white. "So, you took all of my college money? How much?" Silence. I repeated, my voice simmering. "How much?" My father exhaled. "All of it, $218,000. It felt like a slap across the face. In my head, years of scattered numbers echoed. $500 from Grandpa for my 10th birthday. $1,200 from 3 summers working at the library. $3,000 from a statewide academic scholarship. All gone." I shot up, the chair crashing behind me. "Did either of you ask me? Did you even think about how I would feel?" My father snapped. "Lucy Jane Holloway, this is not the time for childish tantrums." My mother crossed her arms and said coldly, "If you can't understand what's best for the family, maybe you're not mature enough for a prestigious university." I laughed, a crooked, choking laugh. I didn't know if it was scorn or despair. What's best for the family? Or best for Alex? The guy who crashed his first company in 8 months? The guy who promised to pay back double what Mom gave him? No one answered. I looked at them, these people who once held me when I fell off my bike, who kissed me before every piano recital, who congratulated me on every science award. And then I understood. Their love came with conditions. I turned away, saying nothing, but inside me a line had been drawn. From that moment, I was no longer part of that family. I went upstairs, not to cry, but to prepare to leave what used to be my home. I shut the door, and for the first time in my life, I felt like a stranger in my own house. No knock of apology, no text, no explanation from my mother. My father was silent, as he always was after doing something cruel that he thought was right. Downstairs I heard the clinking of glasses, a soft laugh from Alex. Like nothing had just happened. I opened my desk drawer and took out the small leather wallet Grandma had given me. Inside was $200 I had just earned from tutoring the neighbor's son. Money I'd planned to use for my first Harvard hoodie. A little gift to myself. A symbol. That night, it became my entire fortune to start from zero. I didn't cry, I just felt something burning inside my chest. Not anger, not sadness, but resolve. A cold resolve that made my hands steady as I started packing. I picked up each item like dismantling a dream. No need for party dresses. No need for the blouse mom picked for the family showcase. Only the essentials: 2 t-shirts, jeans, a pair of sneakers, laptop charger and personal documents. Birth certificate, social security number, passport. I walked to my bookshelf, running my fingers across titles I once cherished like friends. I couldn't take them all. I chose one thin book, The Defining Decade. I figured, if ever there was a time to redefine a life, it was now. When I opened the last drawer, I saw my old phone, the one without a SIM card. I slipped it into my back pocket, just in case. The iPhone I currently used, I left on the desk, with a short note. Don't look for me, don't say I betrayed you, because you betrayed me first. I folded the letter without signing. They'd know who it was from, and they would understand. I wasn't the obedient Lucy they once knew. When I opened my door and quietly stepped down the stairs, the clock read 2:12 a.m. The house was dark, except for the faint light spilling from my father's office, where he and Alex were still discussing Series B funding strategy. I slipped through the front door without a sound, not because I feared they'd stop me, but because I didn't want to see those fake concerned faces ever again. The backyard gate wasn't locked. I slid through and took the narrow alley to the main road. The night air was freezing, but I felt hot all over. Maybe from the adrenaline. Maybe because for the first time, I was taking control of my fate. The bus stop was about 3 blocks from our house. I bought a one-way ticket to Providence, Rhode Island, the only place I knew someone, a girl I met at summer camp back in 10th grade. We weren't close, but I remembered she once said her family ran a diner and always needed extra help. I placed a fragile hope in that memory. The ticket cost $17. I slid the bills into the machine, clutching every remaining penny like a final breath underwater. I arrived in Providence around 5 o'clock in the morning, when the city was still half asleep. I sat in a cafe that had just opened, the only source of light on a long foggy street. I ordered a black coffee and a small donut, totaling $4.85. Left in my wallet was $178.15. And a question far bigger than that modest amount. How do I start over? I opened my laptop and connected to the cafe's free Wi-Fi. The screen lit up with a background photo of me and my science camp research group from last summer, back when I still believed that hard work always paid off. I opened my email and typed into the search bar, Amanda Green, Camp Discovery 2019. Luckily, I had saved her email address. I wrote, Amanda. This is Lucy, the girl you went to Camp Discovery with. You once mentioned your family owns a diner? I know it's strange reaching out after all these years, but I'm in Providence. If you need kitchen help, I'd love to lend a hand. I have experience cooking, dishwashing, and I can start any time. Hope you don't mind me asking. Lucy. I hit send. And after that, I just sat there, watching as people slowly began appearing on the street. I didn't know where the future would take me, but I knew one thing for sure: if I had to start with $200 and a deep scar in my heart, I would. Not for revenge, but to prove they bet on the wrong person. I was no longer Lucy Holloway, the practical daughter. I was Lucy, the one who would rewrite what success means. I got Amanda's reply at 6:42 in the morning. Go to Danny's Diner, corner of Clark and Jefferson, ask for my aunt, the owner, her name is Helen, tell her you're a friend of Amanda's. Good luck. I read that line 5 times, no greeting, no well wishes, but to me, it was the first lifeline in a flood. I closed my laptop, stuffed it in my backpack, and stepped out of the cafe. The cheap coffee still sat half-sipped in a paper cup. Cold, bitter, like the first morning of freedom. Danny's diner sat nestled between two old brick buildings, low-roofed, with a faded red sign but its door wide open. From a distance, I could see smoke rising from the kitchen vent, and the smell of bacon wafting all the way down the block. I pulled my backpack straps tighter, took a deep breath, and pushed the door open. "Dine in or take out?" an older woman asked, her voice raspy, her gray hair tied into a small bun. "I'm not here to eat, I'm a friend of Amanda Green," she said to find. "Aunt Helen?" The woman stared at me for 3 seconds, then smirked slightly. "I'm Helen, and Amanda must trust you if she's sending you here at this hour." She looked me up and down. Wrinkled t-shirt, dark circles under my eyes, heavy backpack, and asked, "You ever worked in a kitchen?" "I helped cook at summer camp. Meals for 80 people each time, the rest was cleaning, mopping, scrubbing toilets." She didn't laugh, didn't look touched. "Good, if you can handle hot grease, shouting, and picky customers, head to the back. Start by peeling potatoes." Danny's kitchen was nothing like the sparkling ones you see on TV. It was a world of grease, heat, and shouting like gunfire. Helen didn't use recipes, she used memory, speed, and instinct. And if you messed up, you got yelled at. "Not that direction, want to serve raw potatoes? This is a prep table, not your bedroom floor, clean it before I slip and sue you." I got yelled at nearly every 15 minutes. But I didn't argue. I didn't walk out. I didn't cry. Within 2 days I learned to chop onions without tearing up, to carry hot plates without dropping them, and to read lips from 10 meters away when Helen signaled an order. And then her tone started changing. "You're quicker than yesterday. This kid calculates portions better than my last accountant." I had never felt prouder just for being told I sliced cucumbers evenly. 1 week later, I started helping her check invoices. I discovered a supplier overcharging by 12% compared to the contract. When I pointed it out to Helen, she didn't say a word. But the next morning, I saw a new invoice on the counter, with the corrected rate. That afternoon, as I was scrubbing a tray burned black, Helen walked over and set down a glass of cold water beside me. "You don't seem like one of those kids who run away from home just to rebel." I paused, looked at her. "I don't want to talk about it. But I also don't want to pretend." I spoke quietly. "My family took all my college money and invested it in my brother. No asking, no warning, just made a decision, like I didn't exist." She nodded. Didn't press. "All right then. We'll call you Lucy, the official kitchen assistant. $300 a week plus room and board. If you do well, I'll raise it." I could barely believe my ears. I nodded over and over, throat tight. "Thank you, I won't let you down." She patted my shoulder, then turned to walk away. But before she left the kitchen, she added, "Oh, and don't call me ma'am, I hate feeling old. Just call me Helen." I lived in a tiny room behind the diner, once a storage closet. A folding bed, a window the size of a hand, and a dim yellow bulb. But I'd never known a place so peaceful. Every night after my shift, I opened my laptop, not to vent on social media, but to start building a plan. Something bigger than this kitchen. Bigger than the hurt in my heart. I typed the first line of a new document. Lucy Holloway, Premium Tutoring Services, College Prep, Academic Strategy, for high school students and elite parents. I typed like my life depended on it. Because it did. My first tutoring session happened during a lunch break, at Danny's diner, when Helen asked me to help her niece Ruby, an 11th grader, prepare for the SAT math section. The kid sat across from me, staring at a calculus problem like it was an ancient treasure map in Egyptian. I picked up a pen, broke it down into pictures and real-world examples, and after an hour, Ruby looked up, her eyes glowing. "I get it now. For the first time in my life." That evening, Helen pressed $40 into my hand and said, "She's retaking the test next month. Keep teaching her, I'll pay you properly." I didn't refuse, not because of the money, but because, for the first time since I left home, I felt like I still had something valuable: my mind. Word spread quickly among the mothers in Providence. A young woman who once got into Harvard, who somehow knew how to wake up kids' brains, was now tutoring at a diner on the corner of Clark Street. The next week, I had 2 more students, then 5, then 10. Some just needed to graduate, others aimed for Brown, MIT, or Columbia. No one asked me why I was working in a diner. No one knew I used to be a Holloway. They only knew me as Lucy, the odd tutor with magic. And that was enough. I rented a tiny room near Easton High School, where most of my students studied. During the day, I taught at the diner or the library. At night, I built a website. Every skill I'd learned in AP Computer Science came into play. I named the project Lumen Pathways, the path of light. Partly because it sounded professional, partly because I knew my own light had once been extinguished by those closest to me, and now I wanted to help others find theirs. I designed the logo, wrote ad copy, created online registration forms. Every morning before my kitchen shift, I printed flyers and handed them out at bus stops, sandwich shops, laundromats, anywhere students or parents might pass. And then it happened. A woman named Mrs. Chang, the mother of one of my students, stopped by Danny's diner. She sat at the counter, watched me wiping it down, and asked, "You were accepted into Harvard, right?" I paused for a moment, then nodded. "So why aren't you studying there?" I smiled, folded my towel, and quietly replied, "Because someone decided my future wasn't as important as someone else's dream." She looked at me for a long while, then reached into her purse and handed me a business card. "I have a group of friends, all company executives. They're always looking for guidance for their kids to get into top schools. They need someone like you. If you're ready to expand, I'll refer you." I gripped the card tightly. My heart was pounding. 3 months later, I officially left the diner. Helen didn't try to stop me. She simply said, "You're the only one who's kept this kitchen running on time for a month straight, but I know you weren't born to be a cook. Go. But don't forget where you started." I hugged her tightly. If anyone deserved to be called family, it was Helen. I moved into a small office on the 2nd floor of an old building near downtown Boston, somewhere I could meet students and eventually hire help. The desks were second-hand, the printer was old, but when I hung the sign, Lumen Pathways Tutoring and College Prep, my chest swelled like I'd just laid the foundation for an empire. I posted a job listing in Ivy League alumni groups, scholarship forums, and student job boards. Only one requirement: you had to have been accepted into a top 20 university, be able to communicate clearly, and be kind. In the first week, I received 34 applications. I selected 5, trained them using the method I had developed: teach to the test, support students emotionally, and combine expert-level writing and interview coaching. I created a resource pack called the Lumen Kit. Custom exercises per school, a tracking system, and a strategy guide for the entire application process. And most importantly, I taught them how to inspire dreams, not just deliver knowledge. Because I knew what it felt like when your dream is crushed by favoritism, by family, by reality forced upon you. Within 6 months, Lumen Pathways had over 80 students in Boston and expanded with offices in New Haven and Albany. I didn't run any ads. Everything came from word of mouth. From one mom to 10, from one kid getting into Yale to 3 more wanting to follow. Money started flowing in. But I didn't splurge. I hired a legal consultant to formalize the company, bought insurance, built a student data management system, and invested further in curriculum development. And I still didn't use the name Holloway. I signed every contract as Lucy Hart. No one knew who my parents were, no one mentioned Alex, the so-called startup genius, now failing for the 3rd time. I made myself into someone entirely new. No baggage, no shadows, only the road ahead. I never imagined a simple tutoring session would open the door that led me into the tech world, the one my brother had spectacularly failed in. That day I was invited to a new client's house. Emma Becker, a 12th grade student at Wellingham Prep. Her family was billionaire level in energy tech, and her mother, Susan, had heard about the tutor with the highest Ivy League acceptance rate on the East Coast. Emma was bright but lacked direction. While I was explaining Yale's essay structure, I happened to glance at her father's desk, where a thick printout lay with a bold title, HydroCore Energy, Next Gen Energy Storage Proposal. I skimmed a few diagrams and specs. Within seconds, I saw the flaw. Not because I was a genius, but because I'd grown up around Alex's useless blueprints, plans full of fantasy and money-burning ideas. I had seen these same mistakes before, hidden beneath buzzwords and blind optimism. "Does your dad talk about work at home?" I asked Emma during our break. "All the time," she said, flipping her worksheet. "He's stressed. The energy storage project might be a huge loss." "Is he the CEO of HydroCore?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, why?" I didn't respond. But that night, back at my office, I didn't open Emma's essay. I started researching HydroCore, their energy storage development, and, most importantly, the failure that was looming. 3 weeks later, I sent Susan Becker an email requesting a short meeting, not as a tutor, but as someone with a different perspective on her husband's project. She replied within 2 hours. 10 o'clock Wednesday morning, 22nd floor, HydroCore headquarters in Boston. Don't come unless you're sure you have something worth saying. I printed my technical analysis and placed it in a leather folder. That night, I didn't sleep. But not out of fear. Out of anticipation. It was the first time I wasn't just stepping out of the academic world, but walking straight into the one that once stole my future. Walter Becker's office, CEO of HydroCore, overlooked the Charles River. He wore a collared shirt without a tie, his expression cold as stone, his voice icy. "I don't usually meet with people who don't have an appointment. I just need 10 minutes, I said, placing the folder on the desk. "If you find it useless, I'll leave immediately." He looked at me like I'd just walked out of a high school classroom. But he opened the folder anyway. 5 minutes in, his brow relaxed. 10 minutes in, he leaned on his elbows and stared at me. "Where did you study energy engineering?" I didn't, but I grew up in a house where someone burned nearly $300,000 on a similar project. And ignored every warning. He said nothing. I knew I had just struck a nerve in a man who once threw money around without control. Eventually he nodded. "We've considered these issues. But we haven't found any practical solution yet." "You're proposing a hybrid model with tiered storage design?" "Yes, reallocating the storage chain and applying deep learning AI technology to manage backup energy. The initial cost is higher, but performance triples. And the risk is cut by more than half." Walter glanced at Susan. She said nothing, but her expression shifted from skeptical to intrigued. "What do you want?" he asked. I didn't respond right away. I opened my laptop and pulled up the second slide. HydroCore Development Proposal, Lumentech Division. I don't need a title. I need technical control, 30% equity in the energy storage division, and full authority to deploy the AI system. He raised an eyebrow. 30%? Who do you think you're talking to? "To someone who's about to shut this project down if it doesn't turn a corner," I replied without blinking. Silence filled the room for nearly a minute. Finally, Walter extended his hand. 20% and you'll lead engineering alongside our current tech lead." I didn't shake his hand. Instead, I pulled up the final slide and pointed to the revenue forecast. 25%. And I'll bring not just the solution, but also the go-to-market strategy and brand repositioning. If you agree, I start tomorrow." Susan smiled. Walter nodded. We shook hands. 2 months later, HydroCore Revive was announced. The completely revamped version of next-generation energy storage technology. The media called it the biggest comeback in cleantech for 2024. My name wasn't on the headlines, but in the legal documents, I was listed as co-founder of the tech division. And I knew That was real power. As for Alex, a few weeks later, I heard he had just burned another $50,000 on an innovative blockchain education platform. My parents were still funding him, of course. Still blind. Still believing that his dream was more valuable than my reality. They had no idea that the technology Alex once claimed was his life's mission now bore a logo I personally designed. I understood something very clearly after signing the deal with HydroCore. True success isn't about standing on stage, accepting awards. It's about sitting in the shadows, running every stage, without anyone knowing your name. A few weeks later, I founded a new legal entity, Hartwell Holdings. A parent company with no website, no public office, and just a registered address in an office building in Delaware. Through Hartwell, I created 3 subsidiaries: Thorn Tech, Red Point Ventures, and New Brook Strategies. Each name was vague, clean, and on paper, completely disconnected from me. My real name appeared in no public records. Lucy Hart was just a shell. Behind it, the person running the empire quietly taking shape, was still the girl who left home with $200 and a shattered sense of trust. I began targeting small companies struggling in emerging tech sectors: renewable energy, AI-driven supply chain management, and education data. Companies most investors still doubted. But I didn't. Because I could read between the lines of every report. The desperation, the stagnation, and the untapped potential. I acquired 15% of an AI firm called Nodeflare in exchange for restructuring their product and rebranding their customer strategy. 6 months later, Nodeflare was approached by Google. I sold 8% of my shares, tripling my initial investment. Through Redpoint Ventures, I began collecting near-bankrupt ed-tech companies, brands investors mocked as obsolete toys. But I saw opportunity for resurrection. I gathered scattered developer teams, redesigned the virtual learning platforms, applied the tutoring model I'd tested at Lumen Pathways, and relaunched under a new name, EduSpire. Within 9 months, EduSpire had over 400,000 trial users. And I, the architect behind it all, had still never appeared in public. I lived in New York, in a nameless high-rise apartment in Hudson Yards. Each morning I powered up 3 monitors and managed everything like a silent general. I made calls under aliases, signed deals through private legal firms, and sent reports via encrypted email. I stayed off social media, gave no interviews, shared no inspirational journey. I didn't need the world to thank me, I just needed them not to know who I was, so no one could drag me back into the shadow of the family I had cut off. Helen was the only one who still knew what I was doing. She called me every Sunday, asking if I was eating enough, sleeping enough, and still writing in a physical planner every morning like she taught me. "You're running a whole spider web now," I once told her, half joking. "Yeah. But don't become a spider that only knows how to trap," she said. "Have a purpose, Lucy. Otherwise you're just a fancier version of the people who once hurt you." That line stayed with me for an entire week. One October day, I got a message from my investment advisor. Montgomery Group was faltering after a risky venture into a new AI super champ from led by none other than Alex Holloway. "I think you'll want to see this," the advisor said, sending me an internal financial report he'd gotten through a private source. I read it and nearly laughed out loud. Same recycled strategies, same flashy keyword-filled pitch decks, same tech loopholes I had warned them about when I was 18, and now? It was dragging Montgomery Group to the edge. I skimmed to the bottom line. Proposed Series C funding target, $48 million. I asked, who have they approached? Several funds. But lately they've been very interested in a group called Hartwell Holdings. I smirked, the game had begun. That evening, I called Helen. "I think I'm about to return to where it all started." "Home?" she asked. I paused for a few seconds. "No. Back to the wreckage that used to be called home. This time, not for forgiveness, but to finish it." Helen didn't ask anything else, she just said, "Finish it the right way, otherwise the pain will find a way to survive." I understood what she meant. I couldn't do this out of vengeance. I had to do it for justice, for principle, and for the 18-year-old girl who once walked out of that house in silence, with nothing but a backpack and a shattered sense of trust. The next day I signed an investment agreement under the name Thorn Tech Holdings, requesting a meeting with the board of Montgomery Group to explore partnership potential. No one knew who I was. All they saw was a signature and a flawless financial portfolio. I scheduled the meeting. 9 o'clock Monday morning, conference room, 34th floor, Montgomery Plaza. I wore the black suit Helen had once given me, the most elegant thing I had ever owned. I printed my presentation and placed it in a leather briefcase, then stepped into the elevator I'd never once been important enough to use 10 years ago. When the doors opened, I walked out, not as the practical daughter they once dismissed. I walked out as the person holding the fate of the very company they once sacrificed my future for. And they didn't know it yet, but they were about to. Montgomery Tower still stood tall in the financial district, just as it had 10 years ago, but the only thing left intact was the cold granite on the outside. Inside, everything had rotted from the core. They just hadn't admitted it yet. I passed through the revolving doors, black suit tailored tight, heels echoing with every step. The receptionist didn't recognize me, simply bowed and directed me to the 34th floor, where the meeting to decide the company's fate would take place. The conference room doors opened. Inside, my father, Richard Holloway, sat at the head of the table, just as he had for years. To his right, my mother Lorraine, in a moss green velvet dress, sat upright, as if she still held some shred of power. And at the end of the table, like a stain that refused to disappear, was Alex. He was hunched over his phone texting while his life burned down around him. Just a few sentences away. "Good morning, I'm Lucy Hart," I said, my voice clear through the table mic. "On behalf of Thorn Tech Holdings, I'm here to review Montgomery Group's restructuring proposal." My father stood to shake my hand, his palm damp and slightly trembling. "Thank you for coming. We're hopeful that a strategic partner can help guide the company through this challenging time." I sat down, opened my laptop and projected the first slide. A graph showing 3 consecutive quarters of stock decline. "This challenging time you speak of," I said, staring directly at him, "is in fact a collapse that was long foretold." No one said a word. I clicked to the next slide. In 2014, Montgomery poured $218,000, my entire college fund, into an energy storage project led by Alex. The project failed. No one took responsibility. No one gave answers. Alex looked up, frowning. "How do you know that number?" I leaned forward, enunciating each word. "Because that money used to be mine, because the one whose dream was stolen back then was me." The room froze. My mother gasped, barely audible. "Lucy?" "Yes," I said with a cold smile. "My full name now is Lucy Hart Holloway. But you never asked where I've been these past 10 years, did you? Because in your eyes, I was just the practical kid. Unworthy of sacrificing for your golden genius, Alex." My father opened his mouth as if to argue, but I raised my hand. "I'm not here to revisit the past. I'm here to present a choice." I advanced to the third slide. Financial reports from HydraCore, NodeFlare, and EduSpire. The 3 companies I currently operated. The net profit exceeded $400 million per year. I have the capital to save Montgomery. I have the tech, the team, and the strategy. But I'm not here to help you keep your seat. I'm here to take back what should have been mine. My father leaned back, his eyes sunken, his voice hoarse. "So what do you want?" I stood, walked to the whiteboard and wrote 3 conditions. Alex steps down from the company. No executive role, no future investments, no advisory capacity, no appearances. Richard and Lorraine Holloway retire, immediately. The board formally acknowledges that removing me from the family's future was Montgomery's greatest mistake. Alex jumped to his feet, his face beet red. "You've lost your damn mind. This is my family's company." "No. It used to be our company. But you and they chose to cut me out. I turned to the board. And now, the only person capable of saving Montgomery is the daughter they once abandoned. My mother looked down, tears falling onto her hands. I couldn't tell if it was shame or regret. Probably both. My father stared at the list of conditions for a long time, then turned to the board. One member whispered, "We don't have another option." He nodded. For the first time in his life, he wasn't making a decision, he was simply signing to admit he'd been wrong. I picked up the pen and signed the investment agreement, then turned to leave, but before I stepped out, I paused and looked back. Oh, one more thing. I pulled out a piece of paper. This is a list of donations from the Lucy Hart Foundation for underprivileged students. It includes an honorary scholarship program at Providence Community College. I looked directly at my mother. The school you once said I should attend. To be realistic, it's now the place I fund with nearly $2 million a year, because I believe every kid whose dreams were crushed like mine once were, deserves a different beginning. I closed the conference room door behind me, leaving a silence so heavy, it pressed against the glass. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt a complete release. Not because I won, but because justice had finally been named. The formal signing took place on a gloomy Monday morning, as the New York sky hung thick above Montgomery Tower. I walked into the room, this time not as a petitioner, but as the one in control. On the table lay the finalized restructuring agreement, bearing 3 confirmed signatures: Richard Holloway, Lorraine Holloway, and Alexander Holloway. No one spoke as I sat down. The room was so quiet you could hear the turning of paper, the scratch of pens, and even someone quietly holding back a sigh. I didn't need any more apologies. Everything I wanted was now written in black and white. Alex was removed from the executive board and permanently banned from using the Montgomery name for fundraising. My father retired unconditionally, and my mother relinquished her seat on the founding committee. In return, I invested $70 million into Montgomery Group, under the banner of technological and market restructuring. I named the new company Montgomery Hart Technologies. Not because I wanted to keep the name of a family that once turned its back on me, but because I wanted it to stand as proof that even things that once discarded you can become the platform you rise from, on your own terms. In the first week after taking over, I cut 20% of mid-level management, most of whom were Alex's close allies. I brought in the engineering teams from HydroCore and EduSpire as the new core. I held the first public company-wide meeting in the ground floor auditorium, a space that had been collecting dust for 3 years. I stepped onto the stage. No spotlight, no background music. Just a mic in my hand. And my voice. I used to be part of the founding family here. But I was also the first person sacrificed by that very family. 10 years ago, I was forced to leave because I lacked vision. Today I return, not for revenge, but to rebuild. No one applauded, but I saw dozens of eyes locked onto me, and I knew I didn't need fanfare. I just needed them to understand. I wasn't here to reopen old wounds, but to prove that the future can be rewritten. Not with a family name, but with real value. 3 months later, Montgomery Hart Technologies secured 3 strategic partnerships with venture capital firms from Singapore, Toronto, and Frankfurt. The company's assets recovered and surpassed $500 million. The media began referring to Lucy Hart as a phenomenon, a mysterious woman behind the revival of a corporation once on the brink of collapse. I declined every interview request. Not because I feared facing the public, but because I understood. My time wasn't meant to be wasted on flashy headlines. It belonged to the students supported by the Lucy Hart Foundation, at more than 20 community colleges across the United States. And to those who, like me, were once underestimated. Those who know their worth isn't in their last name, but in how they rise from where others threw them down. One late afternoon, I received a message from an unknown number. "Can we meet? Just once." No business. Just family. It was my mother, she added. Your father's been weaker lately, and Alex, it seems he might finally understand something. I didn't reply right away. I set my phone down and looked at the sky where the sun was slowly setting between skyscrapers. I remembered the night I first slept in a cheap rental in Providence, clutching my only backpack. Heart hollow, but eyes wide open. Now, I was somewhere I hadn't even dared to dream of. I texted back. We can meet. But don't expect me to come back. I don't go backward. We met at a small cafe by the Hudson River. A quiet place, no noise, no camera lights. My mother stared at me for a long time, then placed a small oak box on the table. Inside was an old photo. Me, age 5, grinning in my preschool uniform, holding a red pencil. The photo used to sit on the mantel for years, until it was replaced by one of Alex receiving an honorary award at a virtual tech summit, where he never even completed a product. I was wrong, she said, her voice trembling. Back then I thought supporting Alex was saving the family. But in the end, you were the one who brought everyone back. I said nothing. I didn't need a confession. But I did acknowledge one thing. She finally had the courage to look at the wound she had inflicted. You once asked if I saw myself in anyone in this family. She looked up. Now I think you're not like anyone. You created yourself. And maybe that's what we never understood. I nodded and stood, saying nothing more. Before walking away, I said just one thing. I'm not coming back. But I forgive you. Not for you. For myself. The day Montgomery Hart Technologies reached a $1 billion market valuation, I held the celebration where no one expected. Helen's old diner, now purchased and upgraded into a vocational training center for single mothers and school dropouts. Helen sat in the front row, her hair grayer but her eyes still sharp as razors. I'm proud of you, she said softly. Not because you're successful, but because you still carry the heart of the girl who started in this kitchen. I looked around. The place that was once a greasy fry station now glowed with light, filled with students learning culinary arts, financial literacy, and life skills. I smiled. Because I knew I had truly made it. On my own terms. And this time, no one could ever take that away from me. Lucy's story is a powerful reminder that success does not require the approval of those who once rejected you. When her family chose to sacrifice her for someone else's bigger dream, Lucy didn't fall. She started over from zero and built her own empire with intellect and resilience. She didn't seek revenge through hatred, but by becoming the best version of herself. Through that, Lucy shows us forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the ultimate strength of someone who has risen above the pain. What do you think of Lucy's choice? Would you do the same if you were in her shoes? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family and life.